Hiker vanished in Yosemite. 17 years later, his camera revealed 47 chilling photos. "He didn't run, you just didn't look," Sarah hissed at the rangers who had branded her husband a deadbeat for 17 years. The injustice of Miller's runaway theory rotted until a 2023 rockfall coughed up Julian's Nikon. The film didn't show a man escaping debt. It showed him following crystal-like handprints into a wall of solid granite. Frame 40 revealed a reflection in a pool. Julian was alone, but the water showed a stone-skinned figure reaching for his throat. Before we go any further, if this is your first time here, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Your support means the world and helps us bring you even more powerful stories. Stick with us until the end, and if this mystery moves you, share your thoughts in the comments and pass it along to a friend. Yosemite is a masterpiece of granite and gravity, but for Julian Vane, the famous vistas were just white noise. Julian didn't care about the postcards. He was a 42-year-old purist who hunted the shadows that lived in the cracks of the cathedral spires. He was a meticulous man, the kind who'd spend an hour leveling his tripod legs just to capture the way light died against a stone face. In June 2006, Julian kissed his wife, Sarah, goodbye and grabbed his Nikon F6. He promised to be home by 8 with a roll of film that would finally pay the mortgage. He was an underdog in the art world, a man chasing a breakthrough while the bills piled up on his kitchen table. That morning, he looked like any other hiker in a faded flannel shirt and sturdy boots. But Julian wasn't looking for a hike. He was looking for a ghost. When he didn't show up for dinner, the park went into high alert. But here is where the injustice starts to burn. The lead ranger back then was a guy named Miller. Miller didn't see a missing artist. He saw a cliché. He found Julian's old Subaru at the trailhead and spotted a stack of past due notices on the passenger seat. Instead of launching a full-scale search, Miller told the press that Julian was likely a runner. He framed it as a man buckling under the pressure of a failing career and a mounting debt, walking away from his life to start over under a different name. They searched for 72 hours, a half-hearted effort through the easy trails, and then they packed up. They left Julian's reputation in the dirt and his wife with a mountain of questions that no one cared to answer. For 17 years, Julian Vane wasn't a victim. He was a headline about a man who gave up. Then, in late 2023, the mountain itself decided to speak. A series of small tectonic shifts caused a minor rockfall near the base of the cathedral spires. It wasn't a catastrophic event, just enough of a shiver to open a fissure that had been sealed by a granite slab for decades. Two hikers, college kids looking for a shortcut, stumbled upon a narrow, vertical crawl space that looked like a jagged wound in the earth. Wedged deep inside, protected from the rain and snow by the very rock that had swallowed it, sat a Nikon camera. The leather strap had petrified, feeling more like stone than hide, and the metal body was caked in a fine gray mineral dust. When that camera hit the evidence locker, the atmosphere in the ranger station shifted. The old-timers remembered the Vane case. They remembered Miller's smug press conferences. A young forensic specialist named Clara was tasked with recovering the film. She worked in a darkroom that smelled of vinegar and old light, her fingers trembling as she gingerly pried open the crushed titanium casing. The roll of 35mm film was miraculously intact, shielded by the heavy-duty build of the camera. As the images began to emerge in the chemical bath, the room went silent. These weren't the photos of a man running away from his debts. These were the photos of a man being lured into a trap that defied every law of the natural world. The first 20 frames were beautiful, almost painfully so. They showed the spires at dawn, the light hitting the granite like liquid gold. You could see Julian's skill in every composition. But then, at frame 21, the story breaks. Julian is no longer looking at the peaks. The camera is pointed down, into the shadows. He's found a handprint on a flat face of granite. It's not a muddy print or a bloody one. It's an impression in the stone itself, as if the rock had turned to soft clay for a single second. The fingers are impossibly long, tapering into points that look like quartz crystals. Wow, you can almost feel Julian's heartbeat through the lens. He didn't turn back. He did what any obsessed artist would do. He followed the prints. The photos show him moving away from the sunlit trails and into a part of the spires that doesn't appear on any Park Service map. Frame 25 shows a narrow opening in the rock, draped in a strange, translucent moss that looks like spun glass. Frame 30 is a shot of Julian's own boot prints in the dust, but behind them, the ground is smoothing itself over in real time. The mountain was closing the door behind him before he even knew he'd walked through it. The injustice of Miller's report felt like a physical weight in the darkroom as frame 35 appeared. It showed Julian's hand reaching out toward a wall of solid granite that appeared to be rippling like the surface of a pond. This wasn't a man escaping a mortgage. This was a man witnessing a glitch in reality. The escalation was no longer about a missing person. It was about a geological, predatory event. The curiosity loop had turned into a death spiral. Julian was documenting his own disappearance, frame by frame, leaving a trail of breadcrumbs for a world that wouldn't find them for nearly 2 decades. When the lab technicians in 2023 began scanning the negatives, the room felt like it was shrinking. Each frame was a digital ghost, a window back to a 2006 that Julian Vane never truly left. You could hear the hum of the cooling fans on the high-end scanners, a sharp contrast to the absolute silence on the film. Frame 36 showed Julian standing in a corridor of stone that shouldn't exist. The granite wasn't jagged or broken. It was smooth, molded into organic, flowing curves that looked more like the inside of a throat than a mountain. 5:14 p.m., the metadata on the frame read. Julian was losing the light. He was using a higher ISO now, the grain of the film making the images look gritty and desperate. Frame 37 is a close-up of a wall where the gray dust is thick. Julian had wiped a patch of it away with his thumb, and underneath, the rock was translucent. He'd captured a shot of something embedded deep inside the granite. A gold wedding band, perfectly preserved, suspended in the stone like a prehistoric insect in amber. The realization hit the room like a physical blow. Julian wasn't just exploring a cave. He was walking through a graveyard of people the mountain had already digested. The escalation moves from curiosity to pure, cold terror at frame 40. Julian had reached a small, stagnant pool of water in a basin of quartz. He took a photo of his reflection, a habit of landscape photographers to check the light. In the physical world, Julian was alone. You can see his tripod legs in the corner of the frame, but in the reflection on the water's surface, there is a second figure standing directly behind him. It's tall, spindly, and its skin has the exact texture of weathered granite. It has no face, just a slight indentation where a mouth should be, and its long, crystalline fingers are inches from Julian's flannel collar. Did he see it? Clara, the forensic tech, whispered to the head ranger. She was leaning so close to the monitor her breath fogged the screen. Look at his eyes in the next frame. Frame 41 is a frantic, blurred shot of the ground. Julian had dropped the camera. You can see the lens cap dangling by its string, swinging wildly. He was running, but in Yosemite, where do you run when the ground is part of the predator? Frame 42 shows a shot taken over his shoulder as he fled. The narrow fissure he'd entered was gone. Where there had been an opening to the forest, there was now only a solid, seamless wall of gray stone. The mountain hadn't just closed the door. It had healed over the scar. The psychological loop tightens as Julian realizes he is trapped in a biological machine. He begins to use his flash. The burst of artificial light reveals the true horror of the cathedral spires. Frame 43 shows the ceiling of the crawlspace. It's lined with hundreds of personal items, spectacles, hiking boots, car keys, and more cameras, all partially absorbed into the rock. It was a collection, a trophy room. Julian's actions become frantic micro-movements of a man trying to leave a legacy. He takes a photo of his own feet. He is standing in 6 inches of that fine gray dust. In the photo, you can see the dust is actually moving, swirling around his ankles like a slow-motion whirlpool. It wasn't dust at all. It was a microscopic mineral organism that was slowly petrifying his boots, fusing him to the floor. The gossip around the station changed that night. The rangers who had laughed at Miller's runner theory were now staring at the screen in shamed silence. The injustice was absolute. Julian hadn't abandoned his family for a fresh start. He'd spent his final hours documenting a nightmare so that someone, someday, might understand why the spires were so hungry. Frame 45 is a portrait of Julian's face. He is sitting against a wall, his back already fused to the granite. He looks tired, not scared anymore, just exhausted. He's holding a small scrap of paper from his pocket, a grocery list with milk, bread, anniversary flowers written on it. He held it up to the lens so the flash would immortalize it. It was his final screw you to the mountain, a reminder that he was a man with a life, not just more raw material for the rock. The penultimate photo, frame 46, is a shot of his tripod. It's snapped in two, wedged into a crack. But as the techs zoomed in, they saw the crack was actually a mouth, a geological orifice that was slowly pulling the metal legs into the deep earth. The mountain wasn't just killing him, it was recycling him. The tension in the station was at a breaking point. Only one frame was left. Frame 47, the final witness to Julian Vane's 17-year silence. The silence in the forensics lab was absolute as Clara prepared to reveal frame 47. For 17 years, Julian Vane had been a ghost story told by rangers to warn hikers about the dangers of overreaching. He had been a scapegoat for a cynical investigator who preferred a runaway to a mystery. But as the final image flickered onto the high-resolution monitor, the injustice of Miller's runner theory was replaced by a terror that felt ancient. Frame 47 was taken in pitch blackness, illuminated only by the camera's powerful flash. It was a wide-angle shot, likely triggered by Julian's hand as he slumped against the back wall of the narrowing fissure. The light didn't reveal a simple cave. It revealed a geological digestive system. The walls weren't stone. They were translucent, pulsing with a faint, internal network of veins that looked like liquid silver. And hanging from the ceiling, partially fused into the rock like a macabre chandelier, were the remains of Julian's predecessor, a man in 1940s gear, his leather boots and woolen coat now perfectly petrified into the granite. Julian had captured the exact moment he realized he was just the next layer of the mountain's history. The revelation hit with an emotional punch that made the lead ranger turn away from the screen. Julian's final act wasn't a struggle for air. It was a struggle for the truth. He had spent his last ounce of strength ensuring the camera was positioned so that when the mountain eventually breathed and shifted, his story would fall into the hands of someone who could clear his name. The investigation in 2023 was reopened immediately, but the aftermath was bittersweet. When a tactical team returned to the cathedral spires with heavy drilling equipment and ground-penetrating radar, they found nothing. The fissure that had spit out the Nikon was gone. The rock had settled back into its seamless, monolithic state. According to the radar, the mountain was solid granite for 300 feet in every direction. There were no voids, no tunnels, and no Julian. The legacy Julian left behind wasn't just a collection of 47 chilling photos. It was a warning. His wife, Sarah, now a woman in her 60s, was finally given the death certificate she'd fought for, but it didn't list a disappearance. Under pressure from the evidence, the Park Service changed the cause of death to environmental misadventure, though everyone in that lab knew the truth was much stranger. Julian Vane didn't run away from his life. He became part of the landscape he had spent his life trying to capture. He is still there, beneath the gray dust and the granite veins, his flannel shirt now a layer of silicate, his bones a part of the quartz. The mountain gave back the camera because it was finished with the story, but it kept the man. Today, if you hike the cathedral spires during the golden hour, you might notice a specific section of rock that seems to catch the light differently. It doesn't look like granite. It looks like a textured gray flannel. And if you're very quiet, you might hear a faint metallic click echoing from deep inside the stone, the sound of a shutter that never stops closing. Julian Vane is still taking photos, recording a world that the rest of us will never see until it's too late. If the thought of what's hiding in the shadows of our national parks keeps you up at night, subscribe and turn on notifications. We dig through the coldest files and the strangest evidence to bring you the stories the official reports would rather forget. Join the conversation below. Do you think Julian stumbled upon something prehistoric, or is the mountain itself a living entity? The truth isn't always on the map. Stick around, and let's find it together.